Oh, hello everyone. Good evening. Hope everybody's doing all right. I I don't know if I'm 100% prepared, but I'm pretty prepared for this. So let's dive right in. Welcome to the 22nd of hopefully many episodes of Bard Advice, a D&D slash RPG slash life advice themed podcast where I, Charles Chaz Yazik, the DM, the Bard, do my best to answer any questions that you might have pertaining to any of those things. I hope everybody's doing well. Hello from Detroit, Texas. Everyone checking in. Hey, Avram, Chris, River, good evening. Haunted Bird, Bean, Cat Jazz. All the old regulars. All the old where everybody knows your name going on. Thanks for joining. Welcome. So, this week, I do have a few things that are planned, but I made a couple of notes, so we can talk about some notes. But before we get into all of that, let's do what we always do at the top and remind everybody of the email address, which is bardadvice@gmail.com. Please send any questions, concerns, complaints, compliments there. Bard Advice. It also looks like bardadvice. If that helps you remember it, it helps others. Or it's just a fun thing to say. bardadvice@gmail.com. Please send things there. If you want to get yourself some merch, you can get to manshorts.com. And on that note, nothing is completely set in stone yet, but I did initiate a conversation about more dice today. So, fingers crossed on that everything goes well, but looking like those might be coming down the pipe. But in the meantime, go get yourself some shorts or a mug or something. Also, if you want to contribute to anything that I do musically, you can do so directly. Oh, no, my thing's gone. I guess it went away. Oh, well. You can do so directly by donating via Cash App, Venmo, or PayPal at Yazik, Yahzick. Currently developing the third album. It's going a little bit slower than I want to, but what are you going to do? It can only go so fast and so much. And to Chris's note here, if that's true, if you become a member of the channel, you do get a fancy name. You get a fancy green name, and you get exclusive emojis, like those cool ones there that Chris has posted. That's a good opportunity and reminder to thank all of the patrons, anybody that participates in the super chats or any kind of other type of direct donations. I don't know what I guess they're called stars on Facebook. Any of that stuff is appreciated. It helps, makes a big difference, and helps keep this train a-moving. So thanks for all of that. I have my fan on, so I'm hoping that that's not too disruptive on the audio, but we'll see how it goes. So, Art Corner. Well, not yet. I've teased it twice already. Just two quick notes. We're still in the NBA playoffs. I still think that we might see a lawyer. I still think we might see a Lakers-Celtics final, although it could be Denver, Philly, or maybe Miami. I don't know. It's just too up in the air. Also, oh, well, hello, Carolyn. Glad that you caught me live as well. Happy that you're here. Thanks for joining. And then also my wife and I have been watching Love and Death on what I guess is Max now. And can we discuss that briefly? That seems really stupid, right? HBO, everybody knows what HBO is. Max. Seems silly. Seems like a reason to just charge people more money. Anytime I see things like that where I get an email that's like, oh man, Super Deluxo's coming. It's like, oh, cool. So it's going to be more money. Thanks. Thanks for that. Anyway, that show, Love and Death, is based on a true story. It says that it is a true story. That seems like a bold claim, but it's a true story about this crazy murderous affair that took place in the 70s in Texas. I don't want to give too much away about it, but Elizabeth Olsen, Jesse Plemons, it's good. It's very interesting. Worth checking out if you've got Max, formerly HBO. The streaming service formerly known as HBO. Why don't they just call themselves that? It's just as stupid. So, now that I've said those few things about basketball and the Love and Death, we can finally get into the Art Corner, which I'm excited about, and I put together literally in the last 20 minutes. So this week for Art Corner, I would like to talk about this I don't know if I don't know if Guy does enough justice. This interdimensional being that I came across. I actually met this person through the Dudesy podcast, but I have since discovered the world of VR chat, and specifically his world in VR chat. So I just want to talk for a few minutes about this guy. His name is TC Poole, and he is a Twitch streamer. I've linked his Twitch in the description for you to go check him out. I would highly recommend that you do so. He is done some really, really cool stuff in VR chat, which I know has been out for several years. I avoided getting into it or even checking out what it was because I assumed that you need a VR headset. Even if you had a VR headset, I assumed that it was kind of its own thing, and it is that, but you do not need a VR headset to play it. In fact, most of the people that I've encountered in there don't have headsets. And moreover, it's very sandboxy. It's very intuitive in terms of customization, in terms of creating stuff in Unity and then uploading it in. And so TC Poole has done just that with. So he has a stream on Twitch, and I would highly recommend going and checking it out because it is indeed an experience like nothing you've ever seen before. He's created this entire world, and he goes on adventures on his stream in the world with the people that are fortunate enough to be along for the ride. It's really, really cool stuff. And oddly enough, when we first started speaking, I found out that this guy had never played D&D before. And it just absolutely screams D&D. It is it's Funkatron, actually, is the name of the world. At least that map. There's more going on. I cannot stress enough how cool and deep the lore is, and if you're into that sort of thing, I would definitely recommend getting into it. So VR chat, if you don't know, it's a game that's on Steam. It is free, and if you have a PC, you don't need a headset to use it. So I would highly recommend anybody getting it and just checking it out, if for no other reason than to realize I think that there is an untapped kind of gold mine here when it comes to RP. Because I think that that's the direction that we're going anyway, right? With Dungeons and Dragons. That seems to be the move that we're making, is more online or more visual, more digital. But that's the nature of where we're going in general. So I think, in a year or so, we're probably going to be having conversations about how this is similar to World of Warcraft, this new 1D&D they're setting up. Because it's just going to be so cool what you can do, I imagine, in that engine. I mean, I don't know, maybe it'll be bad. But I expect that they're going to try to make it as cool as they can to get people to play and have sort of not necessarily it's not necessarily playing Dungeons and Dragons as a video game. It's kind of a hybrid between at least like what I'm seeing and proposing and experiencing in VR chat is this hybrid of, well, you can do role play here and you can experience it, you can visualize it, you can encounter these characters and see them. And so that's what he's done, TC Poole, with his world. I would definitely recommend checking him out on Twitch because it is really, really cool. And I've gotten involved, so I think it's going to get cooler. And we've gotten some other D&D people that are involved. Maybe one day we'll get a real-life Royal Road that isn't terrible mobile game. Yeah. Another interesting note that I'll say about the VR chat that I learned is that with PC, there's no limitation to your world sizes, from what I understand, which is insane. I don't know where else that's happening. So look into it. Look into TC Poole's Twitch. Once more, he's a cool guy. Check him out. TC Poole, twitch.tv/TC Poole. And yeah, and also check out VR chat because I think that's a really cool thing. Alrighty. So that was Art Corner. Let's get into some questions because we have some, and I actually have a list of names. So I've kept up, I guess, to an extent with what's going on. And this first one is actually, we're going to read an article after this one, briefly. But this first question is from Jay. And Jay asks, did you see Hasbro's announcement for their Fast channel? Thoughts? So I got this question earlier this morning or this afternoon, and I had not heard of this. I had not heard about this. I guess that this broke yesterday. But let's look at the Variety article, shall we? Wait, let's go back to the question. Oh, yeah, that's right. And then we turn this thing on. Kaplow. Okay, perfect. So let's read along, gang, shall we? And figure out what's going on if you don't already know. This is D&D stuff. So, Dungeons & Dragons free 24-hour streaming channel set to launch this summer. This is a Variety article, so, you know. Hasbro's Entertainment 1 is rolling the D&D dice. Betting D&D fans will flock to a new free ad-supported, okay, so not free, streaming television Fast channel dedicated to the fantasy franchise it's prepping for a summer launch. The D&D Adventures Fast channel is expected to be available on a number of platforms, but E1 has not cut any distribution deals as of yet, according to the company. The channel will feature a slate of original celebrity-focused unscripted series, including Encounter Party, Faster Purple Worm, Kill Kill, and Heroes Feast, as well as a catalog content including the 80s D&D animated series. I would say, overall, good luck. The only thing about that, it's going to have to be really good content if you're going to get people to watch that. Now, you're not going to have trouble getting people to watch the old stuff, right? Like, I mean, I think that you can probably just, don't tell anybody I said it, but I think that you could probably just watch the old D&D animation anywhere online, either if it's not on YouTube, it's on Vimeo. But anyways, all of that said, you're going to have to make some really good content because, hey, Hasbro, take it from somebody who's in the D&D content space. There's a lot of good stuff out already. Right? So, I mean, I guess that they've got some sort of partnership kind of going with Critical Role, but they should also recognize that Critical Role is a direct competitor, especially if they are indeed moving forward with making their own RPG. So, and not just Critical Role, you know, any of these creators like, you know, Jenny D or Will from D&D Shorts, or any of these people in the space that are actively making the content already that people are watching. I don't know how you're going to do it. Also, are these are those things mentioned? It says unscripted. What the hell does that mean? You just going to do improv? It's a tough sell. I mean, I say that considering like D&D RP is mostly improv, but I just mean like if you're bringing the D&D, and also, why is it called Fast? Does anybody know that? Let's see what the article says. Does it ever address that? The Fast channel will include episodes of the animated D&D series that originally aired from 83 to 85. Frank Welker. Encounter Party. From the creators of the podcast of the same name, follows 6 professional actors and improv artists from the original podcast and welcomes a new member. Oh, okay. Well, so then they're essentially just, well, hey, looks like Matthew Lillard is involved in the Faster Purple Worm Kill Kill. It's an improv comedy spinoff. Each episode features a party of first-level characters, replete with backstories, accents, theme songs, and more, marching to their certain deaths as they face beasts against which they stand absolutely no chance. Interesting. That's kind of fun, I guess. I don't know. I think that, you know, obviously I don't think that it's a stupid idea. I think that it's a free ad-supported streaming television. Is that what it is? Man, that's a tricky language one they threw on us, huh? Ads is what makes it not free, right? Because, like, I would never claim that our YouTube channel is free. We ask of you your time for our sponsors and also the sponsors that YouTube puts there. See, this is part of the problem with people being convinced that money is more valuable than their time. But that's a different conversation for a different day. I think that this is, it's not a bad idea, but I don't know if they're going to be, I don't know if it's going to be as lucrative as I think it's going to be. I'd say good luck. It's a competitive space to keep people interested in stuff, and even more so. Free in the sense that they aren't charging a subscription, sure, yeah. They should just call it ad-supported TV then. I don't know. Feature ad-supported television? Look out for the rip-offs of CR Live Play and Matt Colville's running the game. Yeah, that's going to happen, by the way. Don't be surprised if you see some favorite YouTuber or favorite TikToker's idea pop up in something. Because, I mean, it's not like they're not watching. And then what are they going to do? So what are you going to do? Sue Hasbro? Man, I didn't even think of that. That's probably going to happen a lot. That's what I would do. If I was an executive at Hasbro, I would just like watch the content that already exists and then just like build off of that. Yikes. Seems maybe a little nefarious. All right. Well, thanks for the question, Jang. Moving on to another one. According to my list here, this next question is from Mike. And Mike asks, I am not a fan of Wizards of the Coast published campaigns and modules, and thus have been using a lot of third-party modules. What are some of your favorite third-party campaigns or modules? You know, what's frustrating about this, Mike, is that I wrote a bunch of them down, and they seemingly have disappeared. I don't know what happened to them. But that said, let's see which ones I could remember off the top of my head, and I'm sure chat will have a lot that they would like to mention. Modern, D20 Modern, and D20 Future. Both of those I really like. Sidewinder is the Western one that I've played, which is really fun. Sidewinder Recoiled, I think. I've heard good things about the Fate system. Cyberpunk 2077. Cthulhu stuff is always fun. Star Wars. Okay, so that's all I could think of at the moment. We're going to see some stuff in the chat coming in. Dungeon in a Box is very good, but a subscription. Oh, interesting. Watsy deleted it from my computer. Maybe. That wouldn't surprise me. There's just like some evil, like some wizard virus on here that just like gets rid of all the stuff I need. I've never used a module. Everything homebrew. Yeah, I relate to that. I mean, not that everything I've ever done is homebrew, but probably 90% of it I don't have too much experience in. You know, it just occurred to me that he asked about third-party campaigns and modules, and I just listed a bunch of, like, different RPG tabletop games. I think we may have completely misunderstood the question. So, campaigns and modules. Yeah. So, there's like Drive-Through RPG, and then the DM's Guild has a bunch of stuff. And I would just recommend homebrew. I would say to build it out yourself or with others, because that's always really fun, especially if you're doing it as a module, or if you're just doing it as like a one-shot or like one or two things. It shouldn't take too long. There are also a lot of really cool Kickstarter stuff, like any of the stuff that we've sponsored. You know, I'll quickly say too about our sponsors, you know, not that I believe in and support everything that any of these companies do, but I will say, like, most of the sponsors that we take on, you know, I've refused sponsors. So has Justin. Like, we do kind of want to at least understand the value of the product, if not outright enjoy it. And I got to say, these last couple of months have been really cool, because a lot of these sponsors have been this third-party stuff that is just so interesting. Like the Oracles of Agra one that we recently did, and then there was the Vagabond's Guide to Dalriada. There's all kinds of cool stuff. 99.9% homebrew here. Yeah, I feel that. So lots of stuff on Kickstarter. Stuff that maybe has already been funded and available. I would say start there. Any of those places. Sorry for the initial fusion where I was just like rattling off other RPGs. Although, hey, maybe you could find interest in checking any of those things out too, as opposed to just like straight up D&D. DM Dave has a lot of solos. Oh, cool. Good to know, because we have a question about that later. Using the castles and crusades made for 5e, but adjust to me and my group. Oh yeah, that's another thing you can do too. Thanks for pointing that out, Robert. We've talked about that before, where you can tweak. That's a cool move, and that's way easy. So maybe you don't like Wizards published campaigns, but maybe you can get one and make it cool with minimal effort on your part in terms of changes. So maybe there's how about this? Think of one that you don't like and then think of why you don't like it and then maybe change that to your liking and then there's your module or campaign. There you go. Find what it is that bothers you and it's probably, X number of things in whatever the variable, any number of reasons, but figure out what it is you don't like. And then that way, what is this? What are these text messages? Oh, these are from Justin. That way, you can make it your own and enjoy it. Hopefully that gives you some form of direction or answer, Mike. Thank you for the question. Supposed to get your first bag of Treasured Realms coffee. Ooh, heck yeah. I hope you enjoy it. That's really cool. Yeah, that's a cool thing. That's a perfect example of one of the companies that it's like, yeah, dude. And it's good coffee. I like the coffee. I drink the coffee. So I'm not a huge coffee drinker, but when I drink coffee, it's Many Worlds Tavern coffee. Hey, are you drinking coffee? All right. Let's keep moving. Moving right along to question number 3. Who is this from? Names. Jen. Jen asks, hey Bard, my group and I just wrapped up a campaign and are meeting up next week to discuss what to do next. People are split between a Western misspelling there. People are split between a Western campaign or something in space, i.e. Spelljammer. I think both are cool, but I'm DMing, so the party may defer to me to be the tiebreaker. What do you think? Ooh, it's tough. Old West or space? How about why not both? Insert the little girl from the from the taco commercial. Why not both? Space Western. Have you heard of Cowboy Bebop? Check it out. Now, I will say, with that being my true answer and my knee-jerk answer, we can kind of analyze maybe the pros and cons of both, but I don't know. Western, let's look at the downsides. Western doesn't have as cool of stuff in terms of equipment or capability if you're keeping it realistic. I mean, if you're setting this thing in the 1870s, there's not a lot of cool technology. Whereas space, on the other hand, I think may be a little overly complicated. So maybe there's some good to the simplicity of the Western, albeit kind of boring. But I don't know. Western can have steampunk, true. That's true. Western style on an alien planet. Interesting. There we go. Yeah, I think combining is where you're gonna find. You could very easily have Starfinder. Interesting. You could just as easily have, I think, a Western epic take place in space. Yeah, like Firefly. Do both. How about a Western Spaces Firefly? Yeah, I'm seeing a lot of that. Most deaf. I say do both. And that, oh man. Also, you should present it to the party that way, and they'll think you're a genius. She's just like, all right, so what are we going to do? Just come in there and just be like, all right, guys, so I've been thinking it over. Space Western. That is fun. Space Western opera. Those are real good. Thoughts, Spelljammer. There's more travel between planes on the astral sea. If you want sci-fi space, Starfinder is very good. Oh, maybe that's what they meant. So, Spelljammer is travel between planes on the astral sea. Right. So maybe they did mean Starfinder. Maybe she meant Starfinder when she said IE. Yeah, do both. Just, I mean, I would suggest take any ideas that you had from the Western and easily port them over into the space story. Starfinder is a good vehicle for a space Western too. Okay, cool. So the consensus seems to be Jen Starfinder, which is maybe what you meant. And honestly, it could have even been what you put in the email and I just transposed it incorrectly. But either way, all things seem to be pointing to Starfinder. It seems like there you'll be able to accomplish all of what you want to and all of what everybody else wants to. Also, it seems like one of those obvious things, right? Probably when you mentioned it, everybody will be like, oh, yeah. So, that way I think the Western people can satisfy that itch of, gunslinger or whatever it is they want to do. But all of that can still take place in Space World. The ship is too big. The movie would be over by the time I got here if I walked. What ship? You could do Red Dwarf campaign with 0 aliens. Oh, you're actually recording a Spelljammer campaign. Cool. While both is amazing, if you only pick one and have never run Spelljammer, run it. Okay, so that's River's 2 cents on the Spelljammer end, at least. If indeed the Spelljammer was correctly referenced, and that's what you're referring to. River says Spelljammer. I've not played it, although I've used stuff from it. Not really played much into it, but I'd say check it out. Starting a new modern Amazing Adventures 5e. Space story is easy to incorporate Western style, moons, planets, etc. Harder for a Western to adopt space settings. Cowboys versus Aliens proves that. Yeah. Interesting. Traveler or GURPS? Hopefully you found something of value in there, Jan. But that's what I'd say. I'd say figure out a way to do both. Make everybody happy. Make a cool space Western epic. And send in an update. I'd be interested to hear. Thanks for the question. This next question is from Jeremy. Whoops. And Jeremy asks, I don't play in a group currently, and most of my experiences have been a bit subpar. Sorry to hear that. I've been wanting to get into playing D&D solo, and I wondered if you had any experience with it. Everything I've read so far suggests playing as one PC, lowering encounter difficulty. But I think I'm going to just make a proper party, as it should be more intuitive. So I would say I did put a link to an article that I found about solo D&D, if it might offer you some insight, or anyone else for that matter who's interested. I have no experience in playing D&D solo. That's not true. That's not true. I've played one-on-one D&D a lot, actually. I will say that D&D that I have played one-on-one was, I think, almost exclusively each time part of a larger campaign or story. So I've never sat down to play out a full campaign or even a module solo. But I have spent several hours playing solo with just like me and a friend DMing, or me DMing and a friend. But that was all always part of the bigger story. So it sounds like you want to play D&D with like a full party. Let me see what chat's saying, because they might have some insight to this. I've had a session with only one player showed up. That's no fun. You have to be able to compartmentalize. Yeah, well, you just have to not be able to meta. How do you not meta? Yeah, you just have to. It's kind of like the honor system with yourself. I was thinking about that this afternoon, actually. I'm really good at that. And it's probably why I always end up having like two characters, but people might argue that I'm not based on stuff I've done on this channel. But I think I'm pretty good at being able to compartmentalize and just also. Because I'm of the belief that metagaming lessens the fun. So I try not to do it. Been thinking about running a campaign that's been kind of tired bringing the party, but start the camping when one member of the party and have him recruit the other players' characters. Oh, that's really cool. We'll hold that thought, Pirate. We'll talk about that, because this next question is about plot hooks. So that's really cool. So to this, Jeremy, I would say that it depends on the DM that's DMing it. As to how they want to do that. I don't think that there's anything inherently wrong with that. Seems like it would be kind of fun. It seems like it might be kind of a pain for you to manage. Maybe not start with a full party, right? Maybe start with like a 2 or 3 man squad, and then maybe recruit along the way as you feel necessary to fill out the party. Only because I wouldn't want you to start with a full party, become overwhelmed, and then become annoyed with the process and not want to do it anymore, only to find out that maybe it was because you just started too heavy. So if you think that one is maybe a little too boring and you want to feel like more of a party, I'd say maybe start smaller than like a full party of 5 or 6, and I would go 2, 3, maybe 4. But I don't think that you should give yourself too much to manage in terms of meta. And also, the more characters you have, the more you're spread thin, the more thinly you're spread creatively, right? So if you want the most richness of each character. So if you have 5 characters, that's more to worry about than 3. Which seems like an obvious thing to say, but it's just like my opinion, just from an outsider looking in. It's like, okay, you want to do solo D&D, but not just with one player, which I get. I understand that. I think maybe a big old party might be too much, but it also depends on the DM that you're working with and how they want to do all of that and handle it. Now, if you're doing it with just like AI or, ChatGPT or something, then that's probably a different story. Knowing ChatGPT, you could probably just ask how to do it, and it would be like, oh, do you want to do it? Do you want to play? Let's play. Because that thing's getting crazy. I was telling my mother today, I speak with it on a regular basis. It's getting advanced, gang. It is. The gap is closing. You gotta find yourself a purpose, find yourself a passion or a hobby. Get going, because labor's not going to exist much longer. There's only one monster that I will allow my players to be a little meta with after a certain point. That's the False Hydra. I recently was reading more and more about the False Hydra river. I definitely want to address that question, although not this week. I will soon. ChatGPT equals Skynet. ChatGPT had a security breach recently. The people who used it as a therapist and stuff have all their stuff exposed. Oh, that's really unfortunate. I feel like that kind of stuff's going to start happening too, right? Where it's just like, maybe eventually there'll just be no secrets. Maybe eventually humanity will reach a place where it's just like, all right, everybody knows everything. It's weird to think about. That's Borg stuff, right? Single consciousness theory. I want to get off on these weird tangents, but yeah, I think it can be done, and I encourage you to do it. I'm sorry that you've not had a good experience in playing. I would encourage you to maybe try again, although, you know better than I do with what your experiences are. But there's always, I think, a group out there for somebody. Even if that's online and as I said earlier, I think that D&D is going more online and more virtual and more digital. So keep playing is what I would say. And I would say start small on the party if you want to do a party. But if your DM's down for it, do what you want, man. If you want to run a 6-7 player party and your DM will do it, do it. Godspeed. Best of luck to you and hope you have fun. Thank you for the question. Hopefully that gives you something. So that was from Jeremy. Thank you, Jeremy. This next question is from River. And I mentioned Pirate, though this one was about plot hooks. River asks, what is your ideal Session 0 plot hook? I've seen some fun ones over the years, and I was curious as to your favorite ways to bring the party together. That's what made me think of, it made me think of that question, and odd that it was coming up when you said that stuff, Pirate, about kind of tiered, bring in the party, but start the campaign with one member of the party and then have them recruit the players. Yeah, I think that's really cool. I think that's a really cool idea. And also, you could let the players kind of communicate with each other. The players out of character as well, to kind of set that up a bit. Or at least kind of customize it to how they want to set it up. As for plot hooks, River, most of my plot hooks that I can think back to, whether I'm DMing or not, are, taverns. One time, prison cells is a good one. One time we were all locked up on a pirate ship, I think, when we came to. Oh, you're finally awake. Yeah. There is the idea of that, of them all being together. I like that idea that Pirate mentioned. I think that's way cool if you just did it where you had everybody create their character and then you just started with one. And whether you wanted to do that over the course of a few sessions, probably not, right? Probably all at the same night, but that would be pretty cool to just be playing with one and then maybe they encounter the other one. You just kind of let them figure it out. Allow them to make more decisions instead of taking them on the rails. Yeah, for sure. Let them figure that out. What is the group dynamic as opposed to just laying it out for them? That's a really cool way to do that. I thought of one too, River, when I first put this question together to have on this episode. I was thinking about it, and I thought of a really cool one just randomly, and I've never done it before. I'm interested to hear your thoughts on this. Wouldn't it be cool for it to be like a dinner party? Like a really... And I don't know, maybe some people will think that this seems really basic, but I never really thought of this until River posed the question. Like a really fancy dinner party where people get announced, right? Because then there's no real timing or time limit to when the characters come in or are announced. But maybe you just start, maybe it's kind of you start with one player and they're already there, right? They're kind of like hobnobbing with people, and maybe that player thinks that they're talking to or encountering other players, but in reality they're not, and those players are subsequently introduced one by one, and it's done like the old Fancy Town style, where the people come in and they're like, introducing Lord and Lady this guy. Here they come, and then everybody claps and the trumpets sound and stuff. That'd be way cool, and you could do that for all of the characters. I mean, it's easily explainable away with RP, right? Just make it so it's like a banquet for the king, and each of the players have somehow served the king at some point and are trusted friends or something. And then they all just happen to be there and meet up. That's a cool thing. I'm about that. I don't know what you would. I guess it'd be fancy dinner party. Fancy dinner party plot hook. You're welcome. In my current game, the PCs are ruling council of a desert tribe, so they had to build their tribe and tell me how and why their characters are each in charge. Oh, that's really cool. Running a battle royale one-shot tomorrow. My players each picking 2 characters from old one-shots we played a long time ago. That's always fun. Battle royales and stuff are always fun, or also like just kind of random arenas that are just kind of asides. Maybe not even anything to do with the main story. It's just build a character. And PvP stuff can be fun too, depending on how you do it. If you want to do it like in a tournament style, where it's just like, all right, build your character and let's fight it out. Done that before. Stayed up nights doing that before. One I used years ago was the party were all captured and put into an arena and had to figure out how to escape. By the end, everyone was having a blast coming up with crazy combo attacks. Yeah, probably. They just get like stuck in there playing. It's like, okay, guys, you got to break out of this arena where they're going to kill you. And then that just turns into just murder hobo circus. Get sucked into a video game. Oh, that is a cool plot hook. I hadn't considered that. Very isekai of you. An anime genre. That's a whole anime genre, dude. That is pretty cool. Getting sucked into a video game. So maybe you're just like regular people, and then it's like, well, nope, now you're in this video game world, and here's your stats. It's pretty meta. Did one once where my party got plane shifted to this world and had to win some games and defend a Ren fair before they could go home. That's cool. Yeah, I do like kind of mixing in real life to fantasy. I like that idea, the sucked into the video game. I can't believe I never used that. But yeah, the fancy dinner game party I think is the really cool one. But I think the classics are at a bar in a prison cell, waking up from something. All right. Sorry, I spaced out there a little bit. These things always go by so quickly. I was just looking surprised to see that we're on the second half of this on the tail end. A trickster deity screwed with them throughout the campaign. Oh, that's always fun. Run a Mile Kyle says, I started with the party waking up in a jail cell, taking the time to learn about each other before being brought out to hear their bogus crimes, then being forced into service to avoid jail time. Interesting. The bar meetup is kind of stale, indeed. Indeed. I think any of the other options that we mentioned here tonight are great, and I encourage anybody to give them a try in their own campaigns. Thanks for the question, River. A pleasure as always. This next question is from Gerald. Gerald asks, I think Ra says only the casters that can use the spell can use the scroll. But for certain spells buffs, could you have any class read or use the scroll? Spells, i.e. detect object, detect person, cure wounds, raise dead, aid, etc., especially if you have a small party not covering all classes. I mean, potions can be used by all. Is this too OP? Well, rules lawyers might tell you that it is too OP, and that's the reason that the rules are written that way. I think you make an interesting point. When it comes to those types of innocuous spells, or seemingly innocuous, aid, maybe not so much. Not aid, cure wounds. Or raise dead. That seems a little crazy that just a regular person could pick up a scroll and raise the dead. That said, detect object, detect person, aid, I'd probably let you use it. I'd have a harder time allowing just a straight up non-magic class using it, or at least using it without there being a potential backfire. The idea that a barbarian could just pick up a scroll and cast whatever it was seems a little crazy, and that's probably why the rule is written that way. That said, as just a general table rule or like a house rule, I would say it would depend on what the spell was, but most of the time is probably pretty okay. Like if you're a fighter, I'm not gonna let you cast like prismatic wall off a scroll. That's insane. But if you want to, if you had a spell that was like charm person, I would say that if you don't know, well, hold on, let me see what actual Raw says, because it looks like someone's put it here. You have to know the spell to make the scroll, and the scroll itself requires magical components. Why is triggering it such an unrealistic thought? I think 5e has a rule that if it's not in your class, you have to roll to beat the spell DC. Okay, well, that makes sense, and I think that that's what I read earlier myself. Is that you can, it's just that there's a DC that you have to beat. Okay. I don't know. I just feel like there should be a potential backfire in the spell. If I'm doing it, I'm saying, sure, if you want to, if you want to be like a monk and cast a scroll that of chain lightning or something, then I would say if you fail the DC, then it hits you or you take the damage. Maybe that's already what the rule is. As a fighter, you know nothing about magic. You can't press medicine wall off of a scroll and it shoot out of the scroll straight up into the air in a pillar. There's a table in the PHB. If you fail to cast a scroll variant, scroll mishaps. Okay, well, perfect. There you go. So it seems like already this stuff's already kind of afforded for. You have to obtain the scroll in the first place. Oh, the spell scroll printing press. That's right. You have to obtain the scroll in the first place. That's true. That's a good point. I think that if it's not excessive, I'm letting you do it. Just as a general rule of thumb. And I really don't need you to roll anything. If you want to push it, there's going to be some potential backlash. If you want to be a fighter who just doesn't know anything about magic and wants to cast some really powerful, like, AoE spell or something off of a scroll, there's a chance that could end up very bad for you. And that makes sense. You don't know fully what you're doing. Especially if you have the components. Because, even if you're not a spellcaster, you can recognize that the scroll requires witch hazel or whatever. Like you can figure it out and get the thing. But I would say, just like with anything else, just as if you were using a weapon for which you had no proficiency, you're putting yourself at risk for not good, for either harming yourself or your party, etc. So I think that that's how you keep it fair. I think it's crazy that you just outright would say that, like, oh, well, if you're not a spellcaster, you can't do this. I'd say it would depend on the spell, and, I think that the penalty would match it. I have tapped all the scrolls together to trigger them all at once. Barbarian. Yeah. It's, but I think it's just general rule of thumb with broken stuff. I don't think that inherently allowing a player who wasn't a spellcaster or even that particular, using a spell that wasn't on their spell list, I don't think the sheer ability for them to do that is broken. I think it's a case-by-case thing. But I think on a lot of the ones that you mentioned, I think it's cool. Not raise dead. That's kind of crazy. In fact, I might outright not allow that. Like, wait a minute, you're just a guy who's going to cast raise dead off of a scroll, and now you have a zombie? I don't know about that. You do have to get the scroll, but that's kind of, the DM, it's at the DM's discretion how that goes. I would let you probably do most of them. Everybody give me a dex check. Yeah, no doubt. And hey, you might hurt the rest of the party too, doing that kind of nonsense. That's the kind of stuff I do, where it's like, oh, what? That's totally a thing I would do. I would be like a big barbarian who would come into the room and see a scroll and then go over to it and hit it. And then everybody would be on fire. And it'd be like, what the hell are you doing? That's the kind of stuff you do. It just happens. I don't think it's too OP inherently. I think that it has the potential to be too OP, but I mean, everything does. Everything's potentially OP. That's how I feel about that. So thank you, Gerald. We do have one last question, and I don't have any follow-ups this week, although I think I will have one set up for next week. Congratulations, you just fireballed yourself in the face. Yes, exactly. That's what you get. That's what you get for messing around. You know, play around with scrolls? That's what does he say at the end of the Aladdin? You wanted it, Jafar? Well, you got it. Supreme ultimate powers, whatever he says. You get everything that comes with it. That's how I would be. If you want to be a barbarian and cast a spell off a scroll, that's how I'm going to be. You want it, you get everything that comes with it. Good luck. This last question this evening is from Chris. Couldn't allow us to have a pod without a question from a Chris. And oddly enough, a new Chris. An entirely new, unrelated to the original, whatever, Council of 30. This is a new Chris. But Chris asks, do you have a favorite character you've played as? Or maybe one you haven't gotten a chance to play? Thanks for all the content. Love the show. Thank you, Chris. Have I answered a question like this before? Maybe. I don't know. I didn't remember, so I just asked it. I just set it up for this week. Well, you asked it, but I don't know if I have a specific one. I don't know if I can do it. I think it's too difficult. I had Studebaker Peppercorn always comes to mind. But also, to be fair, he's one of the more recent characters I've played, too. So, I think back to, to Dinzok Naratal, my bard, my 3/5 bard, that eventually was a Troubadour of the Stars. That guy was really, really great character. Rufio Rosie, the Harpoon Hadozi, which I guess people call it Hadazi. That's fine. I always called it Hadozi, which is why I named him Rufio Rosie, was for the rhyming factor. He was really cool. He was a Hadozi with... So this guy had javelins that he threw, but notably he had 2 harpoons that were all but carabined to his belt. So they could be used as sort of grappling hooks, also to kind of create anchor points for himself, but then they could also be removed relatively easily. That was way kinds of fun. I also really enjoyed playing as Tantor Mantar. In spite of switching over to Studebaker halfway through, Tantor was really fun. And I've had some other big monstrous type characters in the past that I can't really think of their names now. So I'll just say that I don't have a favorite, but there are many that I love and that are close to my heart. As for ones that I've never played before, I've not played too many spellcasters, just overall. That said, a lot of the spellcasters that I've played have been sort of hybrid spellcasters, so I guess that I should specify by saying I've not played many full spellcasters. I like druids. I've played a bunch of druids. I've played a bunch of bards, some rangers. They're really kind of half spellcasters. I mean, I guess you could argue bard is full, but I've not really played many wizards, warlocks, sorcerers. Monks? come to think of it, I don't know if I've ever played as a monk. I think I've always just kind of been off-put and annoyed by how seemingly overpowered they are. Maybe that's just my opinion. Maybe I should play a monk. Knowing me, I would play a monk and then complain the whole time that I was underpowered. Even though I've spent most of my career just monks are OP. Yeah, I mean, that's what I think. It seems to me that they are. I've always felt so. And in particular, the stun, yeah. Well, just their general attacks. A drunk before noon drunken monk. Yeah, that'd be really fun. But the nature of them getting so many attacks, I think, is partly what contributes to them. But I felt that way back in 3.5. I felt like monks in 3.5 were busted. And especially if you start doing stuff like Vow of Poverty. I mean, anything from the Exalted Deeds, anything from the Book of Exalted Deeds is just Broken Town, USA. And some of that stuff that you can stack on top of what are already really strong classes of monk in 3.5. Not to mention like the variants and prestige classes. Some of it is really, really crazy. Stunning blow. Stun ends concentration. Flurry of blows. It is all pretty crazy. First edition Grandmaster of Flowers is the OGOP. It sounds like it. I've also heard that first edition bards are insane. Have we had that conversation here, or was that somewhere else? I don't remember. But I've heard, I think, that first edition, maybe I spoke about that a couple episodes ago. I think so, because I think somebody asked which class, what party if I could pull from every edition. And I think I might have pulled a 1E Bard because they're so nutso. 3.5 monks are broken. Yes, thank you. I have a monk named Haiku. He only speaks in 5.7.5. Now, that's hilarious. Also, probably a pain. I don't know. Well, how often do they speak? Do they speak often in Haiku? Or is it just like a once-a-day type thing? I guess it wouldn't be that difficult to come up with those on the fly. That's a cool idea. What a cool little like quirk. And that's easy because you can just kind of come up with those. Poverty monk. Yeah. The poverty monks are really out of control. Because you essentially, you can't have anything, right? Anything material. But as a result, you get so much stuff. For utility and RP, bards are really hard to beat. It is tough. I think that you can bring RP to anything, though. I always think that there's a lot of really cool RP for like druids or rangers because they're these people that live between worlds. Theoretically, right? Not all druids. Hashtag not all druids. But druids and rangers live in between what is nature and then what is people, society, as it were. I just think that's really interesting. Not many of the other classes do that. Obviously, based on race and background, all characters are different. But I just think that overall, like, you know, these types like fighters and barbarians, well, those you would expect them to be part of society. Maybe not necessarily the prettiest parts of society. Probably lots of war and stuff, but still part of society nonetheless. The like artificers or warlocks or sorcerers or monks, there seems to be always some kind of like, you usually find those types of characters in society, whereas druids and rangers kind of in-betweens. And then bards, of course, they're just, the nature of their character is such that it's just like, have fun with this guy or gal, make this really fun. Speaking of making things fun, I'm really enjoying, I'll speak again about it. I spoke about it at the top of the hour, the VR chat world of TC Poole. And Funkatron, and I've created, I shouldn't say he's done a lot. He's done all of it, really. But we've created a ship for me. I want to start getting more involved and trying to figure out what this looks like in the future. Because like I said, I think that for now, it's like, hey, follow me on Twitter, or like, go check out my Instagram and TikTok. And I feel like in a couple of years, it's going to be, come join my world. It's going to be, why would I follow this person on social media when I can go interact directly into their custom world? I just think that that's where we're going to be going. And I do think that that's where we're going with D&D. They're already setting the stage for that. And it's probably going to be like WoW. And it's going to be like $40 a month for you to access this, what essentially will be Roll20 on steroids, right? It'll just be this really pretty thing where you can customize minis, and you'll probably be able to import like custom minis, and there will be all kinds of cool effects that you can see, and you can move your mini around on the map and stuff, and that's gonna start becoming kind of the standard. At a minimum, people will use it as sort of a companion. That's certainly how I've been using ChatGPT. And dude, if they're able, and they probably will, that might be very well what they're doing at the moment, is implementing the ChatGPT into the game itself, into any of the NPCs. Because didn't somebody make a mod for that on Skyrim recently, where you can essentially set up your NPCs as ChatGPT, so they operate more like real NPCs. You can have more realistic conversations. More importantly, different ones each time, which is a thing we've never really been able to accomplish. You know, that's one of the reasons Minecraft was so revolutionary, was because it redefined what it was to create a sandbox game, in the sense that it's generative, right? It just keeps developing and generating. So if you implement ChatGPT into an ever-growing, always changing visual RP world, we're getting close. We're getting close, people. We're getting close to being able to create these kind of realities that are at least in mechanic principle, indiscernible from our own. And I personally see the value in using the VR chat thing and going in and seeing things that it's like, this needs to exist as a D&D companion. This needs to be a thing where people can come in and play the game like this, where their avatar is their player. And maybe they're not exactly acting it out fully as they would in like a video game, right? Like the mechanics of it being an actual video game are not there, but that's not what it's about. It's like a visual companion to your campaign. And because you can create all of the stuff in Unity and upload it custom, it can literally be whatever you want. Minecraft is D&D, but you're the DM in the play. Star Wars Galaxies would be the biggest sandbox. Then SOE filled it with cement. Players create the story instead of following a story told by someone else. Yeah, and I think that that's what we would want to do, or at least that's what I would want to do with the VR chat thing. If I were to expound upon this and really get into it, and I plan to and intend to build this thing out, then that's what it would be. It'd be a living, breathing world that you could get into and be part of the story. You could be part of the lore. That's one of the appeals with following TC Poole on twitch.tv. go to twitch.tv/TC Poole. Follow TC Poole. That's part of his deal, is that when you're a part of it, you're a part of it. You're a part of the lore. You get to help build it out. So I would highly encourage anybody to do that. Wow, thank you for the memberships gifting, Chris. That was kind of you. Much appreciated and helpful. And also, Daryl, thank you for the donation. Much appreciated. All of those things are very helpful, truly. So, that's what I was thinking about my tiered game, having them choose their own adventure. Oh, I see. Yeah. That's the thing, is that you've got to have the foundation there. You've got to have the choices there, and then just let the player do what they want. And this week did indeed fly by again, as it seems to continue to do. Not that there's anything wrong with that per se, but man, I like keeping it at an hour though, you know? We got to keep it at an hour. We're an hour-long pod. I don't want to get too, I fear if we go too long over and I start doing stuff like 2-hour podcasts, I don't know if anybody wants to sign up for that. Maybe they do. Who knows? We'll figure it all out. Oh, also, River, let's link up on Discord, too, at some point. Shoot me a message or something, because I wanted to talk to you about maybe setting up a Discord for the pod. Because inevitably and eventually, I would like to create a world in VR chat for Bard Advice that people could go and hang out in. And it would be a Bard Advice themed world. Wouldn't that be cool? And you could go in there and listen to the podcast and hang out with other people that are friends of the Bard Advice podcast. I don't know. I just think this is the future for content. So I'm going to try and get in on Man Shorts does not have a Discord, no. I think we did at one point, but it just never really worked out. But I think starting one for this podcast would be kind of cool because it's not overly saturated, if that makes sense. We are small and mighty. Thank you, everybody, for hanging out this week. It's much appreciated. Just another reminder before we're out of here, please send questions to bardadvice@gmail.com. Any questions, concerns, complaints, compliments, follow-ups, critiques, bring it on. bardadvice@gmail.com. Also, you can get your merch at manshorts.com. Wow, let's not clutter all of this up. Manshorts.com is where you can get your merchandise. And you can contribute to my stuff at Yazik. You know the deal. Thanks again for hanging out this week. It's been fun. Surprised, yes, indeed, by how quickly it went by. But we will be back next week. Same Bard time, same Bard channel. 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on the Man Shorts YouTube channel. The audio for this podcast will be made available tomorrow at 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Saturday. So you can get your listening ears ready for that. Hope you all have had a fantastic week and hope you have a fantastic weekend. We will see you next week.